In 2009, during the peak of Sydney's biker wars, Mick Hawi emerged as a prominent figure. As the dynamic leader of the feared motorcycle gang, the Ceros, Mick was known for his colorful criminal lifestyle, which he defined by riches and authority. Despite his terrifying reputation, he was a loyal family guy, married with 2 children, and had an incredible ability to avoid dangerous situations. Mick Hawi, who appeared untouchable, explored a world where danger lies around every turn, and his commanding position could collapse at any time. Mick Hawi's life was about to take a drastic change, an opportunity he would soon face. Born into an Islamic family in Beirut, Lebanon, in 1985, Mick's early years were shadowed by the chaos of the Lebanese Civil War. Seeking safety, his family fled to Sydney, Australia, where a judge would later recount Mick's story during his teenage years. Though Mick had a very ordinary and uncomplicated upbringing, he left school at the age of 16 to work for his father as a spray painter. However, the monotonous routine of a 9-to-5 work did not please him. Mick, craving for excitement and a sense of belonging, was dragged into the exhilarating world of the Comanchero motorcycle club, which marked the start of a far different road than his family had intended for him. Mick Hawi, at the age of 18, was already completely dedicated to the biker code, refusing to collaborate with the police, a basic tenet of motorcycle organizations. He was ambitious from the start and aspired to outperform everyone else in the club. A teenage Mick and a few other Ceros rode out to Weir in northwest Sydney. There they confronted Jock Ross, the self-proclaimed leader of the club, announcing his forced retirement. Under unclear circumstances, this bold move catapulted Mick to the position of national president of the Ceros. By the age of 22, just 4 years after joining the club, Mick Hawi had rapidly ascended the ranks within the Comanchero, earning the admiration and respect of fellow members. His rapid rise was made possible by important members of the group, notably Hakan Ik and Dax Gakuru. These members played critical roles in the club's financial operations, notably Ik, who oversaw large-scale drug importations. Ik was considered as a financial master, capable of both earning significant cash for the organization and expertly hiding its funds. Mick Hawi was a character of contrasts, representing 2 very different egos. On the one hand, he was a famed and dreaded outlaw biker, known for ordering his troops to assault and destroy rival clubhouses. On the other side, he was a committed family guy who was madly in love with his wife, Colina Gonzalez, a childhood friend with whom he had 2 daughters. Despite his criminal background, Mick managed to build a respectable and profitable business. In 2007, he established his own refrigerated transport firm, even going against the trend of the criminal world by hiring his father, demonstrating his complicated duality. Mick Hawi stood out from many in his perilous profession by steering clear of drug addiction. He maintained a stable life, centered on his family and his self-employment, despite his role at the helm of a violent outlaw motorcycle club. Hawi managed to largely avoid major illegal activities. His only brushes with the law included minor traffic violations and a controlled drug possession charge in 2005. Nonetheless, his reputation in Sydney's criminal underworld was on the rise. Rumors that his club was profiting heavily from drug deals, coupled with his increasing list of enemies, including the Kerr brothers and other rivals like Mick Ho, only served to enhance his formidable image. Mick Hawi's notoriety didn't truly peak until the infamous biker brawl at Sydney Airport in 2009. Prior to that, in 2007, he narrowly escaped an assassination attempt when his car was riddled with bullets as he drove home from lunch with members of the Thinking Bite gang. The discovery of a bullet lodged in his pillow later underscored the severity of the threat he had faced. Although many speculated that the Hells Angels were responsible for the attack, conclusive evidence was never presented. During this period, tensions were particularly high, fueled by rumors that the Hells Angels were attempting to encroach on the Comanchero territory in Brighton-Les Sands, especially following their release from jail. Not long ago, Peter Zervis, a Hells Angels member, raised tensions by operating Angels Cosmetics Tattoo on Bay Street in Brighton-Les Sands. which Comancheros considered their territory. Unsurprisingly, the Comancheros were unhappy with this action. In response, Derek Wio, leader of the Hells Angels chapter in Sydney, and Mick Hawi, representing the Comancheros, scheduled a meeting with Ceros to discuss the increasing tension. According to a source in the criminal world who spoke to the Sydney Herald, the situation quickly deteriorated when Peter Ceros and his younger brother Anthony showed up armed with a shotgun. The intended peace talks abruptly turned violent when a fight broke out, and the shotgun was used to strike a Comanchero member in the head, marking a severe escalation in the ongoing turf war between the two gangs. Shots were fired at the tattoo shop, and not long after, it was intentionally set on fire. These incidents sparked a lengthy feud between Mick Hawi and the Zerva brothers. The situation intensified in 2009 with a well-known clash at Sydney Airport. In March, Hawi and 4 companions from the Comos were on a flight from Melbourne to Sydney. During the journey, Hawi spotted Derek Wio, who was wearing a t-shirt prominently featuring the Hells Angels logo. A witness reported that as they boarded the plane, one of the Ceros members shouted, "You're a dead man walking." Calls for additional security at Sydney Airport were made by both factions. A fierce brawl erupted in front of frightened tourists and children, plunging the scene into chaos. Tragically, Anthony Ceros succumbed to a head injury and multiple stab wounds to the chest during the melee. It was reported that Hawi confronted Peter Ceros, threatening his life as the fight concluded. Following the incident, Hawi disappeared, becoming one of Australia's most wanted fugitives for a time after the violent episode at Sydney International Airport, which ended in Anthony Cervos's death. Peter Ceros escaped a terrifying attack in his home's parking lot, where an intruder fired 10 rounds into his car. Following the event, he was promptly taken to the hospital. After fleeing, Hawi decided to turn himself in to the police. His trial began on May 25, 2011, after being charged with second-degree murder. On November 1, 2011, Hawi was found guilty of second-degree murder and sentenced to a maximum of 28 years in jail, with no prospect of release for 21 years. However, the judge accepted that there was no substantial proof that Hawi directly harmed Ceros. Despite lacking direct evidence, the judge believed that Hawi's presence likely influenced the attacker who killed Anthony Ceros. Hawi contested his murder sentence, and on September 4, 2014, he reached a plea agreement with the prosecution. By pleading guilty to manslaughter, he received a reduced sentence of 6 years and 2 months in prison, with no eligibility for parole for the first 3 years and 6 months. During Hawi's imprisonment, the Comanchero biker gang was left without a leader until Mark Buttle took over as the national president of the Ceros. After serving his sentence, Hawi was released on parole in 2015. Once free, he maintained a low profile, adhering strictly to the conditions of his parole. These conditions prohibited him from contacting any members of the Zerva family, associating with members of outlaw motorcycle gangs, or visiting biker-operated venues. Additionally, he was forbidden from possessing firearms or using drugs, which are illegal. Despite his adherence to these rules, Hawi's past involvement in criminal activities eventually caught up with him. On February 14, 2018, while sitting in his car parked at the Rockdale Fitness First Gym in southern Sydney, a masked man approached him and pointed a gun at him. The attacker brutally hit Hawi in the head several times before fleeing with an accomplice in a getaway car. A security camera across from the gym captured the grim scene. Rescuers quickly arrived and began treating Hawi, who was then rushed to the hospital in serious condition. Tragically, he succumbed to his injuries a few hours later. The police immediately launched a search for the masked attacker following the murder. During their investigation, they discovered a burned-out Mercedes that had been used as the escape vehicle. Additionally, CCTV footage revealed 2 masked individuals fleeing through a nearby street after the incident. After 6 months of investigation, the police apprehended 3 suspects involved in the crime. Youssef Nazlioglu was charged with being the trigger man, Jamal Elj was accused of being the getaway driver, and Ahmad Dudar was charged with disposing of the getaway car. Dudar confessed to assisting in the crime after the fact and received a sentence of 3 years and 4 months in jail, without the possibility of parole, handed down by a Supreme Court panel. Both Naslioglu and Elge faced murder charges, although the prosecution acknowledged that their case was built on weak evidence and lacked definitive proof that either suspect was directly responsible for killing Hawi. During the trial, Colina Gonzalez, Hawi's widow, testified that Naslioglu was once a close friend of her late husband. However, their friendship deteriorated during a fishing trip on the central coast of New South Wales in the summer of 2016. After a disagreement, Hawi called his wife to explain the situation and told Naslioglu to return to Sydney because he was upset by Naslioglu's behavior. According to police, after the murder, the accused fled, set their Mercedes escape car on fire, and then escaped in a silver Toyota, which was later found in Rosebery a month after the incident. The court was informed that DNA evidence on Naslioglu and Elge matched DNA found in the Toyota, which also contained gunshot residue. When the trial was going on, both suspects vehemently denied being the individuals captured on CCTV fleeing the scene of Hawi's murder. Elge's defense argued that his height of 199 cm, 6'5", made it unlikely that he was the shorter getaway driver seen in the footage. However, witnesses stated that the taller of the two men seen running away after setting the first getaway car on fire was about 190 centimeters, 6'1". Despite these claims, the judges acquitted Naslioglu and Elge of murder on September 9, 2020, after deliberating for a week. Later, Naslioglu confessed to a separate charge of possessing a firearm and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Naslioglu was released from jail in September 2021, but his freedom was short-lived. While incarcerated, he was secretly recorded discussing his fears of being targeted after his release, indicating he felt his life was in danger. Tragically, these fears materialized on June 27, 2022, when Naslioglu was shot multiple times in front of his partner in the parking lot of his apartment building. He later succumbed to his injuries at the hospital.
A bikie has died in hospital after a shooting in the city's inner west. Police have confirmed the death after he was taken to Westmead Hospital overnight. Husni Shams reports on the attack.
BBC understands former lone wolf bikie Yusuf Naslioglu was shot several times here on Walker Street in Rhodes.
As the chapters of Naslioglu's life unfolded, they wove a narrative filled with intrigue and conflict. From the streets of Beirut to the chaotic environment of Sydney's biker wars, Hawi's story shows both dedication and the appeal of an adrenaline-fueled lifestyle. His rise through the ranks of the Comanchero biker gang demonstrated not only his drive, but also the appeal of the biker culture, with its distinct codes and loyalty. In the middle of this world of crime and power, Hawi was also a dedicated husband, father, entrepreneur, and a man who worked hard to keep his life stable. His attempts to balance the contrasting aspects of his life highlighted the complexities of human nature. His involvement in the notorious brawl at Sydney Airport was a turning point, leading to a lengthy legal saga and a conviction that echoed throughout Australia's criminal justice system. The controversy surrounding his guilt and subsequent plea deal painted a complex picture of the events that unfolded. After being released from incarceration under strict parole conditions, Hawi sought to forge a new path, a quieter existence adhering to the boundaries set by the law. Despite his efforts to move on, Hawi's past caught up with him in a tragic way, leading to a fatal attack that abruptly ended his life and left behind a legacy shrouded in unresolved conflict. The quest for justice led to trials, an acquittal, and further tragedies, as those entangled in Hawi's story met untimely and violent ends. The shadows of the past continued to haunt, claiming lives and perpetuating the enigma surrounding the events that transpired. The intricate web of alliances, betrayals, and unresolved mysteries that enveloped Hawi's life highlights the complexities of human existence.